Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Coding with T. Today we are going to learn how to create onboarding screen in Flutter. As you can see on your screen, we are going to create this onboarding screen with the swipe effects and also with the bottom dots. Basically, these are the two packages that we are going to use, and with the combination of these two packages, you can create any stunning onboarding screen. So without wasting time, let's get started. So we are creating login Flutter application. In the previous tutorial, we already created the custom splash screen. So this is the sequence that we are going to achieve. If you are new, you can get the playlist link from the description below or from the right top corner. So these are the videos that we already created, and also all the code and resources will be available on codingwitht.com. I will also drop the link down below in the description. So let's get started with today's tutorial. Open Android Studio. So we are inside the project we created for our login application. The purpose of this application is that it can be reused for any type of application that requires login and sign up functionality. So over here you can see we have a simple application, but once we start going inside, go to assets, and inside the images I have already created a folder called onboarding images, and we have 3 images over here. Once the assets added, you can get the resources from the description below or from the coding with T. Then go to pubspec.yaml file, and in here we need to add liquid swipe for the swipe effects and smooth page indicator for bottom indicators. Okay, then for the assets, make sure that you have images, and then inside you can see I have added a new folder which is onboarding images in here. So if you have multiple folders, you have to define all the folders and then don't define images here, just add a backslash at the end. Okay, then go to lib folder, and in here you can see we have a simple main.dart at the start, and all the application is inside this source folder. Again, if you didn't watch the previous folder structure tutorial, I suggest you to watch it first. And inside the constants, let me just show you that I have created onboarding colors. Then I have these 3 strings specifically for images, as we learned in the previous tutorial that we are not going to define images again and again inside our application, but we will define it over here, and we will only use these image names in the application. And then in the text strings, you can see in the onboarding text I have added all the text that we required. Now let's go to the main feature, which is the authentication, and inside the screen you can see I have onboarding screen and onboarding model and onboarding controller. So don't worry about these. So let's get started with the design first. It is a simple stateless widget, and inside the scaffold, okay, to create a swipe effect, the first thing in the scaffold we are going to use stack, and in the children of the stack I am going to create the first children, which will be the swipe effect. So this is a liquid swipe. We have to import over here as well. So inside this liquid swipe, the required one is the pages. So these are the pages that we are going to create. We are going to create 3 pages. So let's say we have, so as the pages I have just created a simple 3 containers. Each will be treated as a single page, and I have just defined the color which we have created in the constants here. Now let's run the application, and our splash screen appears, which we created in the previous tutorial. And you can see the liquid swipe is here. When we are swiping, we will be able to create all the colors or to see all the colors with this liquid swipe. Now let's start designing this container. Inside the container I'm going to use a column, and I'm going to add all the children. The first one is the image, and as the name of the image you can see I have used the name over here, which is already defined, which is the string of the image. Okay, so as you can see on the screen, we have one image, then we have 3 text. So to align it properly inside the column, because we want to make sure that our design is responsive and it can be used on any type of mobile device. There are multiple sizes of devices. First, create main axis alignment. Main axis, because column is in vertical direction, so main axis is vertical and cross axis is horizontal. So if you are new to this column and row widget, you can also get the tutorial from the description below or from the right top corner. So main axis alignment will be space around, and you can see that now it's taking equal space, or you can say space evenly. Both will work. Okay, after that, main axis size will be maximum, so the column can utilize all the vertical space. Then as a cross axis alignment, we want to make sure that all elements should lay down in the center. So by default it is in the center, so we don't need to mention it. And also by default it's covering the main axis size as max, so also we don't need this one as well. Now as you can see that when we are going to use space evenly or any other space, these text, this text and this text is going to have equal space. So we don't want that. We want to make sure that these two texts should be together. So instead of doing this, I will go and click Alt Enter, and I will wrap this in the column. So I will wrap these two texts, title 1 and subtitle 1, inside this column. So now this column will be treated space evenly, but not these two texts. Let's save the code, and you can see these two texts are now together. Now let's add a theme. As a title, we are going to use the theme that we already created. Okay, for the subheading, I will just make it center. So we have a text align property, and you can see it's in the center. And also to add some space inside the container, we have a padding property. So as a padding, we use the default size, which is 30.0. We already created in the sizes property. And also for the counter text, I'm going to use this style theme. And as you can see, the styles has been applied with the padding over on the sides. Now it's looking much better. But at the bottom over here, you can see we have left space for the two items. The one is a circular button and one is dot navigation. So for that, after the text, let's add size box with the height of 50.0, and you can see that we have bunch of space now because these are sized evenly. Let's say we have the images with the different sizes, so when we are going to scroll it, might be this image is taking more space than this one. So how we can set that? So we can set it by using specific height to this image. But if we are going to make static height and the device which is using our application is small, then might be our design gets collapsed. So for that, above this return scaffold, I'm going to get the size of our application by using media query. So we have the size of our device, whatever the size of the device which will be inside over here. So go to image, and as its height we will write, and I want to make sure that the image contains 50% of the screen, so multiply it with 0.5. sorry, it's not size dot height, and multiply it with 0.5. we'll get the result. We cannot use constant with the size property, so we have size dot height multiplied with 5 means that 50% of the screen should be the height of this image. Let's save the code, and you can see that now we have the third widget over here at the bottom, and we have given the 50% height to this screen. You can reduce it to 40%, so it's up to you. Now that's it for the container. So I am not going to copy this code over here in the second and third container, but we are going to create a custom widget. Will cause the duplication of the code, so for that we are going to use the code reusability. So to extract it as a widget, right click, go to refactor and extract Flutter widget. So name is onboarding page, click refactor. You can see we have a stateless widget. Now inside this onboarding page, we need to update all the elements for the specific screen. So for that, go to models. Inside the model onboarding, you can see we need to update the image, title, subtitle, container, background, and also we are going to need size. So I have simply created a simple class with all these properties. Now close this one, and over here we don't need size. We will call onboarding model will be the model. So this is a required. Whoever is trying to use this widget should provide this model. So I have just renamed it to onboarding page widget. So you can see we can easily change all these variables with the model dot background color. Size will be replaced with model dot size. Image name will be replaced with model dot image, and also all the rest of them. So we cannot get height from the size, so instead of this size we will get height directly. Let's just go to the model, and inside let's change it to height because we only need height over here. Let's close it, and you can see we have model.height. So this is the widget which is ready to be used. Now let's cut it from here. Go to screens, onboarding, right click, create a new file, onboarding page widget.dart, import material package, paste the class. We have to import bunch of libraries, so it's imported. Let's close this. Let's close this as well. Now in here you can see we have to call the onboarding page, and we have to pass the model here. So instead of passing over here, let's just create final pages is equal to list. So list of widgets. Instead of passing them here, I am going to create pages over here. So it's onboarding page widget. As a model, we have to pass onboarding model, and inside its constructor we have to pass all the elements. The first one is title. Okay, so we have our first widget ready, and we pass all the values that required for that widget, which is the onboarding page widget. So this is the first widget. Let's say we need 2, we need 3, and so on and so forth. It's up to you that how much you need. Okay, so I have created the pages with all the values. Now we don't need this, we just have to define pages over here. Now let's run the application, and you can see the text is there, images are there. When we are going to swipe, you can see all the text and images are being changed. Okay, once the pages have been created, now let's play with the liquid swipe. Add a slide icon widget. It's a widget property which requires an icon. To view this, we have to enable side reveal, make it true. Let's say you can see the icon, but we have to hot reload, and you can see the color of the next slide as well. So now let's try to swipe. Okay, now let's try to create a button. As it is a stack property, so we're going to wrap it with a position. Inside the position, we will create outline button. So it will be bottom 60 points from the bottom, and then as a child I have created outline button. On press will be created in a minute. So as a style, you can see I have created a border side, give it a color. Shape is the circular border. As it is an outline button, so it should only create a circle. Let's save the code, and you can see that we have a simple circle. Now inside the container, to add an icon, we will create as a child icon property. You cannot see the icon because the color is white. So as a background color of the container, let's add colors property. I will use this T dark color. Just close it, and inside this container you can see I have added this dark color. Let's save it again, and you can see that icon is there with the background color. Now we also want to make it circular and increase the size. So we have to remove this color because we are going to use decoration. So decoration and color cannot be used at the same time. Okay, so in here you can see that as a padding I have added 20, and then in the decoration, and also I have added a shape which is box shape dot circular. Now let's save the code, and you can see that our button has been created. With this padding, it has increased the size. Now to make it at the center, go to the stack, and in here we have an alignment property. Let's make it center. So by default all the elements will be in the center, so we have button right in the center, and you can see it's overlapping with the text. So we'll go to the widget, and in here, instead of giving it 50% to the image, we will make it 40%. And the other ways, if you want to give it 50%, then you just have to increase this height from the bottom. So basically you can play with the design, and you can suit yourself wherever you want to. Okay, next we need to also add the skip button at the top. So because it is stack, so again going to use position widget. As a child, add text button. Okay, in here you can see I have added a button with the position of top 50, right 20, and just added a text button. Again, on press will be added in a few minutes. So as a text, skip with a gray color. And now the last one is that we need dots. So we are again going to use position widget. As a child, we are going to use animated smooth indicator. To import a dependency, alt enter and hit enter. Dependency has been added. Now inside we have to pass the active index. To get the active index of this liquid swipe, so we have to create a controller, liquid controller, and don't forget to add this liquid controller in here inside the liquid swipe. So once added, as active index we can pass controller dot current page. Then we need the count will be 3. Now let's save the code, and you can see that in here, as it is in the center, so we have not added position property yet, so it's in the center. Now let's add position from the bottom 10, and to change the colors, currently it's dark blue. To add different styles, you can see I have added an effect property, which is the warm effect. There are multiple other effects. I will drop the link down below in the description of both packages. So as a warm effect, I have just added the new color. Now let's save it, and you can see that dot height is 5.0. The height has been decreased, and it has a warm effect. Okay, now you can see the design has been completed. Now we want to add all the functionality to these buttons, this button, and also we want to make sure that when we swipe, our dot should swipe to the latest screen. So for that, the first thing is we want to create integer, and we want to make a current page is equal to 0 at the start. Then inside the liquid swipe, we have a method on page change callback, because when the page is going to be changed, we want to update the current page status. So I'm going to create a function, press alt enter, create a method which will have active page index. So inside this we will write current page is equal to active page index. This is not available because it is inside this widget function, so it should be outside this widget function right over at the top. Just to make sure that it should not inside this widget function, it should be at the top inside the class. Now in the bottom you can see it's accessible and we have updated it. Now the first thing is, let's try to add a skip property in the onPressed. So I have created a controller.jump to page, means go to page 3. We don't need this, we can add a single line with the fat arrows. Okay, so now let's run the code again and click on the skip button, and you can see that we are inside this third screen. So skip is working. Now let's go to the elevated button, which is the main button. Inside it's onPressed. Okay, inside the first thing we need is the next page. Next page can be fetched with the controller.currentPage +1 means the next page. Now we want to jump towards the next page, so for that we will use controller.notJump. we want to animate to next page, and the next page is next page. Now let's save the code, click on this button, and you can see that we are moving towards the third. Now at the end we are at the first, second and third. We will keep moving like this. Add buttons. Now we want to change the slider. To update this we have to convert, because the design is static, we need to convert this into a stateful widget. So again we are going to get back to the GetX, but first let me just demonstrate how we can convert it to the stateful. Convert it to the stateful widget, and in the onPage change callback we will write setState method, and inside the setState we want to update the state. And inside the animated smooth indicator you can see the active index is this current page. Now let's save the code again. Okay, now let's swipe it, and you can see that it has been using a swarm effect, moving towards the next screen or whatever the current index of the screen is. So this is how we create it using a stateless widget, and you can see that code has been too huge for the single application. So that's why I never recommend to use stateful widgets, because we don't have any separation of concern. All the code is inside the one activity. So I'm just going to convert it to stateless widget, and we will use the GetX. Inside the features, all the logic should be in the controller. So you've created a simple empty class which is saying extended with the GetX controller. Remember that we have to convert it to stateless widget. From this override till the name of the class, just remove it. We have to extract, or we have to remove whatever the elements or the logic we created in here. Just cut it, go to this controller, and that's it. Import this liquid swipe. Remember that anything that we are using with the set state, in here we have to use with the OBS, we have to make it observable. So this current page is now being observed by the GetX, and we have to change this int to rxint, so GetX can easily observe this current page. Whenever the value is going to be changed, it will update on all the screens where this current page variable is being used. Next thing we want to extract is this pages, but over here you can see we have to overcome with this height attribute, because the height is inside this context. So let's cut it from here, go to the relevant page, and in here you can see we have already a context and as a size, and in here you can see we have model.height, but we don't need the model. So in our case we need size.height, and also inside this model we don't need height attribute anymore. And also let me just extract or remove pages from there. We will go to controller, and in here I am going to paste all the pages, import the libraries, and also this onChange callback method should be removed from here, because it is also a logic for our application. It will be placed in here. We don't need setState, because setState is for stateful widgets. Current page variable is using GetX, so to extract its value, it is integer type, so value will be inside this value. Okay, let's head back over here and see the logic. You can see the first button is skip button, which is saying controller.jump to second page. We don't also want to use this over here. Let's create a function called skip. So this skip should return whatever. So this skip is going to skip using this controller. Okay, next at the top you can see we have a main button which is using this function over here, and we are just going to remove this. Head back toward the controller, animate to next slide. We will paste our code inside over here, and we will use this animate to next slide function inside. So in here, instead of this function, we will write our animate to next slide. So how we can do all these elements? The first thing we need is a controller. So we need this GetX onboarding controller. So we have onboarding controller over here. Let's copy it to call the pages, controller.pages. Also to call the simple controller, we have controller.controller, which is over here. So two controllers are not good. So we will call it onboarding controller. Also to call this on page change callback, and back over here, and you can see we need to pass a function which is the outline button. Onboarding controller dot animate to next slide function, and then as a skip we have skip function, and to get this controller current page dot controller dot current page. So we want to use this current page over here instead of this current page. So we will write current page dot value. So we will call simply our onboarding controller. We will go to the current page value, which is this value. It has been updating. Whenever the page is going to be slide, this value is going to be updated, and we want to use the updated value as an active index of our smooth indicator. Right now it's not going to update because the widget is a status widget, so we have to wrap this position widget. If you watch the previous tutorial, we learn in detail that we have to use this observer, which is going to observe the value of this observable. Head back over here, you can see it's being observed by the GetX, but who is going to observe? This observer will be the one who is going to observe. There is no child of this observer, so we have to call a function like this, remove the dots and import the library, and that's it. Now let's try to run the application again. Okay, so our application is running, and in here you can see it's being working very fine, and the code you can see on your screen. So only the design is here inside the design page. So this is the only design, it has nothing else. And then in the onboarding controller you can see we have all the logic over here, and also all the constants, all the files are inside this. So that's how we create applications in the Flutter. I hope you learned something new, and that's it for this tutorial. If you learned something new, please don't forget to like the video, and if you're new to this channel, please subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified about all the next updates, because we're going to learn more and more. That's it for this tutorial. Thank you for watching. Take care. Allah Hafiz.